Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to hearing the stories that you have to share about Dalu. So, up first is Dalu's son, Asith Mukherjee. And as you probably can guess, he's known Dalu his entire life, and so has plenty of stories to share with us today. So I'll invite him up to the stage to speak first.
It's a pleasure to see all of you here to honor my father today and remember him. And I do apologize for reading this. I'm not used to giving a presentation without some slides and a laser pointer, so this is a bit unusual for me. For those who don't know it, my father was called Babuji by myself and my sisters. I don't actually know why, but that's the term I will be using for him today. So back when I was a young boy, one of my sisters, I'm thinking it was Tinku, asked my mother, "Why does Babuji smile while he sleeps?" And my mom replied, "Because he's a happy man." And that is a fine way to sum up my father, a happy man. A man able to find joy in the worst of times. So we may shed some tears today, but Babuji would want some laughter mixed in with the tears. Shortly after my mother's death, Babuji told of getting dressed for her ceremony and calling out, asking her where are the buttons for his kurta. And it was a touching story, and it was also funny. But I am not my father. I cannot tell a joke the way he did. So I will instead share some of my fond memories of him. Given I could hear myself way too much, I like this. Okay.
We need to hear you.
Okay, so since I can't tell jokes like my dad did, I will not be able to pull that kind of joke off. I cannot make a joke about his dying. Or my reaction to it. But let me say some things first about his early life, which was before my time. There is unfortunately very few people left alive who can give a first-hand account of his early life. So you'll have to settle for what I've heard of his early life. I think it's worth recalling. The man we all knew was worth celebrating. But to me, knowing his past helped me appreciate him even more. So I would like to talk about it a little bit. I never met my father's father. I heard about him. His devotion to religious rituals led to his getting a blinding disease. My grandfather then refused to get treatment for himself at a hospital because the hospital also served Muslims and he would not stay there. And so when my father was quite young, his father went blind and the family was thrown into poverty. Yet the same man, my grandfather, risked his life to save a Muslim man during the Hindu-Muslim riots at the time of independence. He let the man go through his house, and the way that he persuaded the rioters not to look for it was to boldly ask, "Would I let a Muslim into my house?" So one of the most honorable things my grandfather did was to break with tradition, because by tradition he should not have allowed that. And he used the fact that nobody thought he could to achieve his goal. So to these early experiences, one can add a somewhat later one, when his family was rejected. His wife, his children, his entire marriage was rejected by his family, all because of caste. Eventually, they did accept his children. We went there fairly often. I somehow didn't notice at the time. My mom never accompanied us until much later. She was eventually accepted as well. But it should come as no surprise that for a long time, my father had very little love for tradition or ritual. So while I was a child in Benares, one of my older cousins asked my father to take him to the temple to pray before his exams. My father agreed, and I tagged along. On the rickshaw ride back, my father said to him, "Shona, see, I'm holding my little finger out. Try praying. See if you can make it move." After a long pause where his finger didn't move, he wiggled it and said, "But see, when I want it to move, it moves." And he ended with, "Next time, spend the time studying." But by the end of his life, my father viewed his books on Bengali pujas as one of his greatest contributions. He found that balance between tradition that he grew up with and his own sense of justice and self-reliance. In our last conversations, he and I spoke a lot about the past, and especially about my mom. But regarding the future, his greatest wish, not surprisingly, was that his grandkids would live happy. But second was that his puja books would be preserved and widely disseminated. And despite the many difficulties life threw at him, and I spoke of only a few, he was a man who smiled in his sleep. He was a man who, for most of my childhood, was my playmate as well as my father. Rather often he was my unwelcome playmate. He took my toys away because he was afraid I would break them. My mom had to insist he give them back, saying, "Toki, hanguk." I'm sorry about my Bengali, it's not very good. It sounded much better when my mom said it, and even better when my dad said it. But in English it means, "So what? Let him break it." Arguing over toys was only the beginning of the headaches I caused him. I broke my arm one summer, broke my wrist another summer, got a piece of my ankle cut off at some point in between, and those were the easy challenges. I don't know if I was an exceptionally difficult son to raise, but there's no doubt in my mind that my parents were exceptionally good at the raising. My father often said it was all my mother's credit. As I always replied, okay, not as a kid, but as an adult, no, it was not. He played a big role too. My interest in science started with his bringing his lab microscope home so we could use it and look at things. And in retrospect, it was almost certainly illegal, but yeah, well, that's okay. We spent summer nights in the courtyard where we would describe the stars, the planets, the constellations. He got a book with a schedule of all the satellites so he could point them out as they went by. Encouragement and inspiration were the approach my parents took, and my father played a big role in that. There was rarely yelling and screaming, and there was certainly no beating. Actually, my father did hit me one time in my life, and that was more of a frustrated nudge than exactly hitting. But I was so surprised that he would do that, I stumbled and fell over. And decades later, I heard that Babaji thought he'd knocked me over. And he felt miserable about it for days. And I wish he'd told me that, and I could have told him, no, actually, he didn't do that. It was perfectly fine. My parents were not lenient. I think that would be a gross misinterpretation. They were pretty strict. But their punishing was very different from what was normal for their time. In that way and in others, they were ahead of their time. There was never any physical punishment at all. When I was little, if I did badly in school, which was about half the time, there was expressions of disappointment and some restriction on playtime, and that was it. By high school, it had evolved into encouragement more than anything else. When I got a C in drafting, Babaji got me a full drafting setup at home. That was his solution. I'm sure my mom was involved, but he's the one who got it for me. They were not rich, and this was not cheap. And I hope they feel it paid off. Because once it was, I could do it for fun. It was fun. And I got an A the next semester. My hobbies were quite a source of stress as well. The most memorable to me is building my own model jet engine. We're not talking a plastic thing, this is a real thing which actually fires up. And I did the test firing in the basement. Looking back, it's actually amazing I was not punished. I was not even yelled at. It was just the only thing that was said is, next time, do it outside. So Babaji didn't just take these challenges in stride. He joined in pranks to make them even more fun. When I built my first radio transmitter, both my parents were thrilled to see it work, but Babaji took it a step further. He invited a friend over to listen to our special radio, which could pick up stations from India. In reality, Bapsi and Tinku were transmitting using my transmitter from upstairs to a plain old radio downstairs. So after a half hour of music and pretend ads, Tinku interrupts in a very official sounding voice with a hot news report. This is so-and-so, this just in, so-and-so is being hunted by the CBI. That's the Indian equivalent of the FBI. Of course, so-and-so was the guest. The look on his face as he recognized his name on the radio was absolutely priceless. But the memory of my father laughing himself to tears was worth even more. So I will now turn the mic over to Banerjee Uncle, who was a friend of our family since I was in high school. I remember mowing the lawn for him when he first moved in. We've known him for a long time. But before I end, I'd like to say another thing. His speech actually started as something I wrote well before my father passed away. I was inspired by a song I heard on the drive home after visiting that Thanksgiving weekend. The line was, "Don't wait till I'm gone. Tell me now." Dara apparently found that song. I thought it didn't actually exist. I kind of imagined it, but it apparently does really exist. I thought I misunderstood it, but so what? I liked the thought, and I expected to read it to him a few days later. I'm glad I had this chance to speak of my father to his friends, and I thank you all for listening. But if I had a choice, I would like an audience of one, my father. And finally, we end by saying that those of you who haven't had should consider telling your father, mother, or grandparent what they mean to you. Probably they already know, as I hope Babaji did. But you may feel good to say it, and they may feel good to hear it. Don't wait till I'm gone.
Good evening to everybody. Appreciate your presence over here today. When a candle goes out suddenly, the darkness can be overwhelming. With great sadness in my mind, I accepted this as an honor by the family to say a few words in this evening. Friend is an English word. In dictionary, it says a person whom one knows and one with whom has a bond of mutual affection. That's the friend. Synonyms are many, but those which I like acquaintance, well-wishers, soulmate. These what I think when I remember Kanai Lal Mukherjee. I call him Kanaida, my elder brother. I call his wife Bihadi as my elder sister. I met Kanai Lal Mukherjee 46 years ago, first time, in Baltimore, picnic ground when all the Bengalis people are together to have a summer picnic. He was trying to fire up a portable propane stove, windy day, in a picnic ground, 30 people there with a pan, only 4 cups of water, and serving 30 cups of tea. The wind was blowing so hard, it was difficult for him to keep the stove burning. He failed multiple times. I just watching it. He was determined to accomplish this, to serve tea to everybody. He did not believe that do or die. His belief was do before you die. And he did accomplish finally. The warm water came up and relaxing tea was served to everybody with the pleasure. He was a believer and achiever. That's what I learned on that evening on the picnic ground. Kanai Lal was many things to many people. A husband for the late Bivadi, a father of 3 wonderful children, Bapsi, Tinku, and Babai. A grandson for 6 grandchildren, and great-grandfather of 1 great-grandson. I hope I'm correct. He was a teacher, priest, author, philanthropist, believer, and achiever, and most high-tech savvy senior citizen I ever seen. Putting things in a video and audio fashion to relay his message. As he was my dear friend who mentored me such a long period of time, counseled me, believed me, and brought the best out of me, which I ever will remember for the rest of my life. We lived in the same neighborhood with a short downhill walk from my home, and uphill walk going back home to his house. After dinner in my home, not only he comes, both of them came to my house not to chat and not to watch 11 o'clock news, but they're very much interested what I'm going to serve for a midnight time dessert. His favorite dish was Hausner's chili pie. He loved that very much. Anyway, we subsequently established a deeper friendship in the field of writing, chemistry lab, and books, and finally an assistant priest. I was assistant priest in many Hindu worships events in Washington and Baltimore area. Both of us are Hindu Brahmin by caste and officially born in same months, July. First is my birthday. He was July 4th on his birthday. His right hand palm, it looked just exactly the same as my right hand. Amazing. Anyway, his writing habit was inspired by his wife. What do you teach or preach? Why don't you write? And that was the spark in writing all the books. Being a medical lab chemistry professor with limited clinical knowledge, he asked me to help him writing medical lab and biochemistry books. At that time, his children are not in medicine. At this point, he saw the invisible and wanted to achieve the impossible. Write books, write what he believes, and pass that to the next generation. He was extremely successful in his writing for the last 2 decades. More than a dozen of different books and some audio-visual videos he has created and passed that belief to the young and the old, and he was very successful. And he drew the worldwide attention. It was a pleasure and honor to help him and give him little guidance to accomplish in his path. Although we're good friends, but many times we differ opinion. We are good. We sometimes get up from the table. No, this is not going to happen. You can't do this. But he believed the argument directs to who is right. But the discussion directs to what is right. He told me many times, let's discuss. We always keep ourselves on the same page. And our motto was, can you do something to make it better of our past work? And more polished fashion? That was his goal, and he was very successful. In all these years, not only we stay in touch with each other, we also did something creative, original, and something for the next generation to see and understand what we really believe. With almost 2 decades of his diligent work, with some help from me, our dream was a reality, and we see the use of our books in 4 continents. Something we're totally surprised. Our salute to many, many people in this journey to giving us the precious technical help and have these books available free in Google Books all the time. The man was a believer and he was an achiever. Dream was the fuel of his life. The dream that he did not sleep, he did not see it during sleeping. The dream that kept him awake to prevent to fall asleep. With the blessings from the Almighty, he reached his goal before he took his last breath. With great humble feeling in my mind, I accepted to carry the torch of the 17 books for future editing and to satisfy his heart. Dr. Kanai loved to visit my home, and he did this multiple times with his wife, and sometimes after the wife's death, alone. The catch part behind is not only to chat, but enjoy favorite dishes my wife makes during dinner time. He was very generous to his stomach in the dining table. Second, third servings are always welcome. And he eats sometimes too much. I was worried about it because of his health issue. Are you sure the third serving? Yeah, I can. I will miss a meal tomorrow. But that doesn't happen. Did not happen. After dinner, he sits in my family room on a sofa with a little drowsy feeling. At 11 o'clock news is on. He waits to hear from me, Kanai, how about some dessert? That looks like a spark. He wakes up. And do you have what are you going to serve? Do you have son papri? There's an Indian dish just like a cotton candy. You put it in your mouth. Before it goes down the esophagus, you don't feel it, it's gone. So may I have a second serving or even a third serving? My wife said, watch it please. He's getting addicted to this dessert. Anyway, it was a fun and really a big satisfaction to serve food to Kanai in dining table. Kanai was a man always had a great sixth sense, the sense of humor. At times he laughed so loudly, I thought there'll be a medical emergency. With tears in the runny nose and watery eyes. I write short stories, and I made a short story, a hilarious one time. I sent that story, I told him a little bit on the phone. Then he said, send me the story by mail. He goes to Nashville P.O. Box, opens the envelope, he started to read the story. He was laughing so much. And sitting on the windowsill, he fell down. People came in. Are you all right? I'm going to call a 911. No, just a laugh, humor, story with a lot of humor in it. I was written by my friend. When he came to my home several months after, asked me to read the story again. In his sofa, he laughed so much, he fell off. Yeah. I said, wait a minute, compose yourself, control. I know you're very happy to read my short stories. It was a memorable moment. He sincerely treasured the story in his heart for a long period of time. And I realized that embarrassing moment in Nashville post office was true, that he laughed so much, he was almost ready to collapse. Today, we all are here to remember him after his departure from this mortal earth in permanent fashion on December 20th, 2018. This is painful, heartbreaking, beyond our dream. Our small satisfaction is that he's in a better place and his suffering due to age has ended permanently. On behalf of my wife, my entire family, and myself, I express the deepest sympathy to the family. Express our sincere prayers to the Almighty. Let the departed soul rest in peace. Thanks to all the daughters, especially Bobsy, for unconditional love and care for last decades since he lost his dear wife, Vivadi. He mentioned to me many times in the phone, also shared his memory of his wife in a hospice, holding her hands together. Let me quote something in Bengali from Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore and finish my talk. তোমার কৃতিত্বে তুমি যে মহৎ, তাই তব জীবনের রথ পশ্চাতে ফেলিয়ে যায় কীর্তিরে তোমার মর্ত হতে স্বর্গে আমি রাখি প্রণাম বারে বার. In English, as a person, you are far better than your achievements. You are leaving behind all your achievements, which will keep you alive in our minds forever. From the mortal earth, I offer my obeisance on your feet hundreds of times. Babsi, Tinku, and Babai, I'm wordless and speechless at this moment. As you all know, the absence does not wipe the memories. Let his past Sweet memories keep him alive in our minds. Let the Almighty give the family members a mental peace at this difficult time. Let the blessings from the heaven fall on each member of his family so that they can grow up and tell that they are good representatives of him in future. Emptiness in the family's heart cannot be fulfilled anymore. When a candle goes out, darkness is overwhelming. My dear Kanai, I will not see you anymore, but with my eyes, perhaps feel that you are in my heart forever. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Bandy Uncle. Next, as Bob makes his way to the stage, so Bob Serkin will be the next speaker. I just want to say a few words about Bandy Uncle. He has been performing the crematory rites for this past week, which is incredibly challenging to have to do that for one of your best friends. So we're very thankful for what he's done this week and for much of Dalu's lifetime. I also will say a few words about Bob as he makes his way up. So Dr. Serkin has been essentially Dalu's family for the last few years as he's lived at Belmont Village. He has done a fantastic job keeping an eye on Dalu while we are away, so he makes sure that Dalu is up and doing his physical therapy, make sure he's not eating too much butter, and basically has kept an eye on him this whole time. So we are, for that, very thankful. We are sure that Dalu got an extra few years thanks to the love from Table 15 at Belmont Village.
I'm not an Indian. I had the opportunity of spending the last 20 months of my life with Kanai, and I just want to tell you several things about him. Everybody's spoken about his sense of humor. He had a great sense of humor, and it passed on to all the people who were with him. I met him at Belmont Village, which is a home for senior citizens, and he had been there, I think, for 2, 3, 4 years before I came. And he used to eat his meals at a table for 4 with 3 very elderly women. These women did not have much knowledge of anything. They didn't know where India was. They didn't know where Maryland was. They didn't know where Baltimore was. So it was sort of difficult for Kanai. So I came down for breakfast one day, and there happened to be a seat at that table. And I sat there, and he comes, and he introduces himself. He says, "I'm Kanai, can I?" And I thought, yeah, I can. And then we started talking about, India and Hinduism and all those things, and he just woke up. It was great. We had wonderful talks, and this happened for about another 2 or 3 times. Then shortly after that, we were at lunch one day, and Kanai was down at that table, and I spoke to the people at our table, and I said, we should invite him over to our table. He would add something to it. So they said, fine. So I walked over and said, Kanai, we'd like you to come and eat with us. He says, I will, but my dinner's here, and I'll come over when it's finished. So, of course, I picked his dinner up and walked back to our table. And he followed me in his wheelchair. Once he got there, he never left. He loved being there. That was the beginning of an illustrious Table 15 at that dinner. We had a great group of people, most of whom had educational backgrounds. We were all different religions. We had different thoughts, and it just worked out wonderfully well. Kanai, when we were talking about any subject, he always had a story to tell about that subject, which was very humorous. He made one mistake, though. He gave me his autobiography to read, and when I read it, I knew all his stories. So when it came time for me to tell him, I could say I knew the end of what the story was going to be, and I could go farther on. But he was just terrific. And I'm going to tell you some of the funny things that he did or that happened. One day he came down and he was telling us that his sink was stained and he couldn't get it clean. People were cleaning, they couldn't get it clean. So my response was, Kanai, you've got to start using the toilet, not the sink. And he just collapsed in laughter. He just fell over. It was the funniest thing he had ever heard. Earlier in the year, and you know, being a Brahmin, of course, he would never eat meat or chicken or anything like that. So earlier in the year, he had ordered his dinner. I didn't. Usually I ordered for him, but I didn't this time. And he started eating, and I was across from him, and I said, Kanai, what are you eating? He says, oh, that's my fish. I said, oh, looks a little different. So he was about halfway through it. He said, gee, this is the best fish I've ever eaten. Further on, it was about just a little bit left. The waitress comes in and brings the dish with the fish. He had eaten the chicken. And it was so hilarious. When we told Babsy this, she almost fell off her chair. It was just hilarious. But these are the kind of things that we could do, and it was just tremendous. It was also a great situation for him because he ended up with two girlfriends at the table. One of them was my wife, and the other was Barbara Ferguson, who sits right over here. And they were so good to him. When he would come down for lunch, Barbara would get up and go over and give him a few kisses on his forehead, and he loved that. He just loved that. When it came time for Wendy, when we finished our meal, we would get in the elevator together with no one else. We didn't want anybody else in the elevator. And we would go in the elevator, and they would hold hands, and they would say how much they liked each other. And it was so good that he didn't get off at his floor. He went up to the third floor, so he'd have an extra 10 seconds with Wendy. He was just wonderful. I'm Jewish, and we had one other Jewish person at the table. And on Hanukkah, which was a year ago, they decided at the institution where we were that they would light the menorah candles, celebrate Hanukkah. And Kanai came, and there were only about 5 or 6 people there. And then it went on for 8 nights. And the only people that came were Dick Spiller, my other Jewish friend, and Kanai. And what we did is we would read the Hebrew, and Kanai would read the English. And he loved it. He came every night, and he was there all the way through. Then we would be discussing all this afterwards and say, we're going to make you an honorary Jew for the week. And he loved that. That was such an honor, such an honor. And then Dick Spiller said, well, you know, you're going to have to get circumcised. The day came for this mock wedding, and I was wearing a Indian robe of some sort and a turban, and Rohini was good enough to help Wendy get into a beautiful sari and dress up, you know, with a dot on her forehead and everything, you know. But I told him, you know, in Indian weddings, the groom is supposed to come on a white horse. And he didn't have a white horse. All he had was a broomstick. So I had to come in riding this broomstick down to the end. And I would sit down there. And then Wendy came in afterwards, and he went through the whole service and everything. And it was, usually there's not a big crowd for these events, but this one was full. Everybody loved it. I mean, it was just, they thought this was the most wonderful presentation that they had ever heard. I sort of became Kanai's caretaker. I enjoyed taking care of him. We were, totally different in personality. They're saying what a mild, pleasant person he is. I'm a type A personality. I'm not like that at all. But he enjoyed that because I could do the things that he couldn't do for him. It was my responsibility to see that he got down to his meals on time. If he didn't come on time, I would go take the elevator up, go to his room, knock hard on the door, open it, walk rapidly down the room, take his wheelchair, and just take him out, down to the dining room. I think he would have missed a good portion of his meals if I didn't do that. He appreciated that very much. And then, if he ordered something and it wasn't quite right, he would never tell the waitress about it. I would tell the waitress about it. He couldn't do it. I mean, it's not that. Two things he didn't like to do. He didn't like to read books, and he certainly didn't like to be aggressive. For his birthday, we had some wonderful gifts for him. I got him a shirt that said on it, "I tell funny stories, I'm Kanai." He just thought that was terrific. He wore that all the time. And then I got him a book on 20 seconds, a 20-second description of all religions. And he thought that was fantastic, because he would talk a long time. This was only 20 seconds, talking about every religion that existed in the world. So it was just terrific. We became very close. And when Kanai fell about 2 days before he passed away, I saw him. I was told that he was being taken to the hospital, so I went out and they had him in a gurney wheeling him out to the ambulance, and he was sitting up and he was fine, and we spoke to each other. I said, "Don't worry, you'll be back tonight, there's no problem." Well, unfortunately, he had a few cracks in his pelvis, not serious, but they kept him there. When we went up to visit him, most of the time, he was asleep, or not responsive. It was very, very difficult to see him like that. Finally, the night of the Christmas dinner at our place, we saw him before we went to dinner, and then someone came down in the middle of the dinner and told us that he had passed away. I was just terribly shocked. He was so dear to me. We were such close friends that I couldn't believe it. But I loved every minute that I spent with him. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next, we'll have Geeta Banerjee speak. So, Geeta Banerjee, the last great memory I have of her and Dalu is for the last birthday that he celebrated this past July. So, Geeta Banerjee made sure that she treated Dalu exactly like a king, exactly as everyone should treat Dalu, and had prepared a huge meal, invited all of his friends, and even had 3 or 4 people try to help bring Dalu from the wheelchair into the home. And so that's a fond memory that I have of them, and kind of speaks to the friendship that they had. So.
Namaskar. I'm Geeta Banerjee. I want to first thank Rohini for allowing me to speak a few words about my Meshomoshki. Life is as good as you make it. From Stories of My Life, author Dr. Kanai Lal Mukherjee. We are here to give tribute to Dr. Kanai Lal Mukherjee, known as Kanai Sahab, Babuji, Kanauda, Kanaida, Doi Kaku, Dadu, and Meshomoshai. As we know, we are celebrating the life of a profound, wise person, Dr. Kanai Lal Mukherjee. Beside the vast knowledge in spirituality and religion, Moshe was loved for his sense of humor, kindness, joyful living. It makes me very proud that I had the opportunities to have Moshe dance on the stage, not just once, more than once. It was such a thrill for both of us that will stay as fond memory for me as long as I live. He married my daughter and son-in-law. My whole family loved him dearly. I may mention few lines from his book, The Stories of My Life. Fortunately, we had the opportunity to enjoy the incredible journey of life from Moshe by having this book. When Dr. Kanai Lal Mukherjee was around 4, his father, Harendranath Mukherjee, the highly respected priest in town, became blind. Naturally, Moshe and his family had to struggle throughout his childhood. He joined Second World War in 1943, spent more than a year in jail during India-Pakistan partition movement. He married his beloved wife, Dr. Vibha Mukherjee, in 1954 against his family wishes. They both had to stay isolated from the family for a long time. It changed years after by the loving attempt to reunite the family by his wife, Vibha Mukherjee. As time went on, Dr. Mukherjee immigrated in USA. He accomplished his PhD and taught for years as a distinguished professor. His wife, Dr. Vibha Mukherjee, became a successful professor as well. For us, his life is an example of rising from nowhere to a position of a professor, an author, and a founder of Association of Grandparents of Indian Immigrants for generations to come. Throughout his life, he continued with his family tradition, the priesthood. Never forgot his heritage. The credit for his achievement goes to his hard work. On the other hand, he gave the credit to his beloved wife for her guidance with the blessings from the God. In one place he writes, I am now convinced that I was a favored child of God. In my heart, my Moshe was a person famed for his wisdom. He was
things that shaped a lot of what I've seen of my uncle. As we celebrate his life here, he was really an institution. He was the three things I have to say: that he was tremendously successful, always cheerful, and yet always humble. The three things I've not seen in too many people. He could connect with a 1-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 19-year-old, or a 90-year-old better than Facebook could or LinkedIn can. And he would do that in a very giving way. And he was better at it than anyone else I know. Second thing, he could make you feel better within minutes, even though he was a stranger. Again, he did this better than anyone else I know. He knew how to make a difference to someone's heart and mind at the same time, not playing a therapist, not playing a coach, but doing both better than anyone else I know. And he knew how to live, how to laugh, and how to love better than anyone else I know. That's how I would like us to remember him. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepta Mama. Next is Sharmishta Ganguly. So, as everyone knows, Dolly was a big appreciator of all types of music, and even more so dance, as some of you have witnessed some of our excellent dance performances together. But we wanted to make sure that we included a few songs that he would enjoy in this program. So thank you to Sharmishta Ganguly for providing that.
Dance was of huge and tremendous significance in his life. is his own family. Both the granddaughters, they did their Araketram, and he was always excited about any kind of music and dance performances. We are part of Upasana Performing Arts Center. Even at our school, he conducted Saraswati Puja. He kind of started the idea of bringing the puja to the school so that the children could participate. They be equal participants in doing the puja themselves. So I know him as a person with a demeanor, let's say, larger than life. Look at that smile. He won everybody over. So I will just present two small bhajans with his blessings. I'm sure he's looking down and blessing us all right now. Itna to karna Swami, jab pran tan se nikle, गोविंद नाम लेकर तब प्राण तन से निकले, इतना तो करना स्वामी, जब प्राण तन से निकले, जब कंठ प्राण आए कोई रोग ना सताए, जब कंठ प्राण आए कोई रोग ना सताए, यम दरस ना दिखाए, जब प्राण तन से निकले। श्री गंगा जी का तट हो, यमुना का वन सिवट हो, श्री गंगा जी का तट हो, यमुना का वन सिवट हो, मेरा सावरा निकट हो, जब प्राण तन से निकले, इतना तो करना स्वामी, जब प्राण तन से निकले। हरि नाम हरि नाम, हरि नाम सुमर सुखदाम, जगत में जीवन दो दिन का, जगत में जीवन दो दिन का। हरि नाम हरि नाम, हरि नाम सुमर सुखदाम, जगत में जीवन दो दिन का। पाप कपट कर माया जोड़ी, पाप कपट कर माया जोड़ी, गर्व करे धन का, धन का गर्व करे धन का। जग छोड़ कर चला मुसाफिर, सभी छोड़ कर चला मुसाफिर, बास हुआ बन का, बन का बास हुआ बन का। हरि नाम सुमर सुखदाम, जगत में जीवन दो दिन का, जगत में जीवन दो दिन का, जगत में जीवन दो दिन का। Thank you.
So after Lalu's wife passed away, he didn't have anyone to help him with his Sanskrit anymore. but Ratnamashi stepped in to help fulfill that role and was a big inspiration. I actually thought that Dali probably would be less involved in kind of his priestly duties, but Ratnamashi kind of brought out some of that back, and he started a class where he taught the Bhagavad Gita, and so she'll be speaking a little bit more about that, I'm sure, in her speech.
So deeply that we cannot forget them. Mission Shah was such a person. He inspired us in many ways with his positivity, joy, love, compassion, care, and above all, spirituality. A few years back, he started Bhagavad Gita discussion for the benefit of Bengali community of Nashville. It is still being continued. He used to explain the verses in a very simple way with lots of stories. Sometimes he would bring selected verses with his translation and commentary. One such verse was Mahamrityunjaya Mantra, as he translated in English, the prayer to win over the death. I am just reading I'm just chanting the mantra first and then reading his translation and his commentary as he said. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvadikamiva Vandana Mityorvushi Mamritat. I'm worshipping the three-eyed God, Lord Shiva, by whose grace I gain knowledge and my sustenance. Relieve me from my mortal attachment, like the cucumber that shivers out from its live branch, and protect me from death and lead me to immortality. Now, his translation, the commentary. This prayer is as important as is the Gayatri prayer. You must have been, he aimed it at his grandchildren. Always, children are his very favorite, and always he tried to explain and comment as simple and as easy so that even a 5-year-old child can understand them. I'm sure that was a very difficult task. So, going back to the writing. You must have been intrigued by the title, which talks about the winning over death. How can that be possible? But in reality, death is merely a biological term that relates to cessation of life. We can keep on arguing for hours about death, and finally, we may even accept that death is the dormant process of life. Let us see how this concept is hidden in this mantra. The mantra beautifully bridges between life and death. In the first line, it thanks Shiva for supporting our lives. It compares the process with the growth of cucumber on its vine, which is our family, our active life. After completing our roles from this mortal world as planned by the God Creator, the cucumber, that is we, get detached from our dear ones, which can be defined as death. Then comes our last wish to the Lord, lead us to immortality. How can this be possible when you are already dead? But let us see the reality. The detached cucumber matures and bears its seeds that will give numerous other cucumbers. If that be so, when did it die? He has attained mortality. So you see, when we die, we leave behind our footprints in our children, in their genes. They eventually grow up, look like us, and fulfill our dreams. We truly never die. We are the children of bliss. That was this is his commentary on that sloka. With this, I offer my pranams to him and you all, because God is within us all. Om.
And then up next, we have my Pisha, Satyajit Pisha, who has come from New Jersey. And he will be including another set of songs as we continue the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohini. It's very difficult to say in few words about, I used to call him Meshomoshai. I knew him when he was retired, and I'm actually Ashish Das' sister's husband from New Jersey. So he was the chief priest in our marriage and various rituals of my family. He was very close to my parents also. Like Bandy Uncle said, he was perhaps the most tech-savvy senior citizen that I have ever known, who learned from Windows to PowerPoint and included the pictures, audio, and then evolved into later technologies and to the world of internet and spread his knowledge. He didn't have any inhibition to experiment. He used to call me and say that how does it sound, what can we change? And we used to have various discussions on how to do technologies. And I wish I had known him longer. And he's really an inspirational guru, teacher, preacher, and the values that he spread among us. And I envy all his grandchildren that they are so lucky to have such a wonderful grandparent. I mean, that's amazing. Rohini, Monisha, Tara, all of you, Ashok. He was an exemplary grandparent. He did quite a few work of Tagore. So I'm evoking Tagore in one of his songs that has an English translation also. His tireless work, he never got tired of doing, experimenting, and so this song is about if I fall behind in my work, please forgive me, O my Lord. this, forgive me, O my Lord, if ever on my way I fall behind, ক্লান্তি আমার ক্ষমা করো প্রভু, পথে যদি পিছিয়ে পড়ি কভু, ক্লান্তি আমার ক্ষমা করো প্রভু। that shakes me so today. This aching pain, forgive, O Lord, forgive, O Lord, forgive, O Lord, forgive. If ever on my way I fall behind, ক্লান্তি আমার ক্ষমা করো প্রভু। এই দীনতা ক্ষমা করো প্রভু, পিছন পানে তাকাই যদি কভু। This profane, forgive me, O my Lord. If ever I cast a longing look behind, দিনের তাপে রৌদ্র জ্বালায় শুকায় মালা পূজার থালায়। This scorching heat of the day, why the smile wreaths of flowers, its faded hue. Forgive, O Lord, forgive, O Lord, forgive, O Lord, forgive. If ever on my way I fall behind, ক্লান্তি আমার ক্ষমা করো প্রভু। This is a stotra that I heard from him and came to know the meaning of this stotra. And this was later on I found a song sung by Arijit Singh. So I was quite inspired to pick up the song. Asoto ma sadgamaya, from ignorance lead me to the truth. Tamosoma jyotirgamaya, from darkness lead me to the light. And mrityurma amritam gamaya, from death lead me to immortality. Peace, peace. Asato masad gamaya, tamaso ma jyotir gamaya, mrityur mamritam gamaya, shanti shanti om, shanti om, shanti om, hari om tat sat. Asato masad gamaya, tamso ma jyotir gamaya, mrityur mamritam gamaya, shanti shanti om, shanti om, shanti om, hari om tat sat. দেখো আলোয় আলোয় আকাশ, দেখো আকাশ তারায় ভরা, দেখো যাওয়ার পথের পাশে ছোটে হাওয়া পাগল পারা। এত আনন্দ আয়োজন সবে বৃথা আমায় ছাড়া। দেখো আলো থাকুক মুঠো, দুই চোখে থাকুক ধারা, এলো সময় রাজার মতো হলো কাজের হিসেব সারা ওই মহাসিন্ধুর পার থেকে কি সঙ্গীত ভেসে আসে বলে আয় রে ছুটে আয় রে তারা যেথা নাই কো মৃত্যু নাই কো জরা বলে আয় রে ছুটে আয় রে তারা যেথা নাই কো মৃত্যু নাই কো জরা हसतो मसत गमया तमसो मज्योतिर्गमया मृत्युर्मासमृतं गमया शान्ति शान्ति ओम शान्ति ओम शान्ति ओम हरि ओम तत्सत् আপনারা যারা জানেন এই গানটা একটু করুন সাথে असतो मसत् गमया तमसो मज्योतिर्गमया मृत्युर्मामृतं गमया शान्ति शान्ति ओम शान्ति ओम शान्ति ओम हरि ओम तत्सत् शान्ति ओम शान्ति ओम हरि ओम तत्सत् शान्ति ओम शान्ति ओम हरि ओम तत्सत् I hope he goes to the world of immortality and inspires us from there. Thank you.
The next person to speak will be Ashok Saha. He will be speaking on behalf of the Bengali Association of Nashville, which Daldu has been able to enjoy for many years. It would be a significant part of this community. They've really welcomed us with open arms for multiple occasions.
Namaskar. I will keep my tribute very small. There is one doha by Kabira, जब हम पैदा हुए जगह हंसे हम रोए ऐसी करडी कर चलो हम हंसे जग रोए. The meaning is, when a child is born, everybody laughs and the child is crying. You do your work, so the day you leave this world, everybody cries and you laugh. And I think Mesha Moshai never smiled. He always laughed loud. And that is what is a positive thing. I have never seen such a positive person in my life. He was what we call hasmukh, always smiling and laughing, enjoying, even making fun out of his disability and not being able to do things. He used to love music, dance. He used to dance. He has danced on this floor many times. And we are proud to have him as a member of the Bengali community. And we are proud that he decided for some reason to stay and make Nashville his last abode. We are really, on behalf of Bengali community here, we must pay that respect to him that he decided to stay here. He could have stayed Baltimore or somewhere else where he was before. But once he came here, Probably he liked the people here and definitely the whole Bengali community. And he was another person who I never saw what we call in Bengali Ajata Shatru. I don't see there was anybody anywhere who will ever be an enemy to him. He was always positive. And my last thing that he told to me was during the last Durga Puja, he gave me a chocolate. And then he said, let Arati cook some food. I will come and eat and do some good drama so we can laugh. So those are the things he told, and he always told. Always he came to our house whenever we invited. He used to drive before. He used to come by himself, stay hours, and stay the time and enjoy the time. There is not anything else I can add. Only thing is, again, the Bengali community here is proud to have him, and we will continue to have him among us as an inspiration. And he always believed that death is inevitable, but like Rabindranath, he said, Marandre duhumamo shayamo shaman. Namaskar.
Our last speaker for the evening will be Ashok Kanwalkar, one of my cousins. And I cannot think of a better person to summarize what all the grandkids had to say about Dadu better than Ashok will be able to do here.
Hello. So I am Dadu's second oldest grandchild. Unfortunately, my brother could not be here. He's in India. It is truly difficult to capture in words the admiration and love that I have for my grandfather, or Dadu as I knew him. His passing has been challenging for me to confront, but this opportunity together today has brought the reality more into focus and forced me to fully consider his departure. This is the first time in a long time that I have come down here to Nashville and he has not been here to greet me, which is an odd feeling. Any death feels premature, and although I do wish he were still here, I feel fortunate to have been able to spend as much time with him as I did. Undoubtedly, there is a giant void where he once was, and now that he's now gone physically, but I still feel his presence in so much of my life, and I hope that his spirit will continue to manifest in the many lives he has touched. Dadu was a brilliant man, but perhaps in no more significant way than in his interpersonal relationships, many of which we have heard about today. Nobody could meet him without being immediately captivated by his charming personality. And for as long as I can remember, he has been a strong and steady source of joy in my own life. He provided an endless fountain of engaging stories that always had the family at the edge of their seats, regardless of how many times these stories were told. Of course, the details of these stories often changed, and my grandmother was quick to correct them and point out these errors. But his focus was not on the details, but rather the laughter and emotion that these tales could bring. While he possessed a seemingly endless treasure of these narratives to entertain the family, he was also an endless source of inspiration to me, and I believe the rest of my cousins. Over the years, I have often bragged to my friends about how proud I am of my grandfather. Even into his later years, he continued to stay incredibly active and incredibly sharp. While many others his age would be content to simply relax and watch time pass by, he continued not just to write medical textbooks, but perhaps most impressively, his incredible translations of Hindu pujas and rituals, making the Sanskrit text accessible to a new generation. He's won praise from across the world for these impressive endeavors. His incredible journey through life, from his childhood in Benares to his time at Belmont here in Nashville, is the stuff of movies. I can recall speaking to my roommate when I was in college about the trajectory my grandfather achieved, and that in a way, I feel that my life could never possibly be as exciting or as difficult or as interesting as his, traveling across the world on a ship to Canada in search of a better life for his family. It is easy to glorify these sacrifices and hardships that he and my grandmother went through, but in the end, they went through such adversity so that their children and their grandchildren would not have to. And I'll never forget that the life that I lead is so much easier because of the hard work and dedication that he and she had. I can only try to emulate his life and his attitudes, to channel the joy and cheer he brought to all around him, with his laughter and his smile, and to live my life in such a way that he would be as proud of me as I am of him. Thank you.
If there's anyone else who would like to speak, you can come up now.
Good evening. I'm not happy to be here, for obvious reasons. But I'm here to repay a debt. Dr. Mukherjee and my father were deep, close friends. My father met him years ago when he showed up at his lab with a presentation that he tried to tell my father at high speed with a somewhat more pronounced Indian accent than he had later in life. And my father did not understand one word. And my father said, "That's very interesting. Could you write it up and bring it to me? And if we can get you a grant, we'll get you a grant. We'll see what we can do." And I went away, created a proposal for what he wanted to do. And he brought it back to my father. In the end, my father created a job for him, and they became very close friends. Years later, I knew him as a child, and really only knew him as the fun guy that my father would bring to picnics and things along that line. But then I got to know him later in my life when I was an adult, and we became good friends. And he would tell me stories about my father. The debt that I have to repay. My father had a stroke that put him in a bed for the last 2 years of his life. And he became quite depressed over it. And depressed over his life. And Dr. Mukherjee would come, and he would visit. And he would talk to my dad and tell him funny stories and make him laugh. And during that period of time, he and I became closer. We would go out and have lunch together and have a good time. And like so many sons, I did not appreciate my father as much as he did. And when Kanai and I were talking, I don't know whether I showed as much appreciation as I should have, and he told me so. He said, "Your father is a great man." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "I'll tell you a story." And he told me the story of when they first met. He said, "I only had $35 in my bank account. And your father made that job for me. And he said to me, 'Do you need money?' And Kanai said, 'Oh, I don't really have any money right now.' My father apparently wrote him a check for as much as he needed and gave it to him. He said, 'Your father is a great man.' Everybody here has been talking about how Kanai was always laughing. He was not laughing. So you need to appreciate your father for who he is." I learned from him telling me stories of what it was like to be a friend to my father. And I learned to be a friend to my father from all of that. My father fell into a depression while he was bedridden. And he felt that he had not accomplished anything in his life. And he said that to me. He said, "It's not added up." Kanai was visiting, and I told him that. And Kanai was actually quite upset. And he went to my father, and he said, "You saved my life." And then he told him all the things that my dad had done for him over the years. I don't want this to sound like it's about my dad. I want to say that this is something where Kanai He loved my dad. And he told him what he was worth at the end of his life, which was something that my dad needed to hear. That is a debt I can never repay. My father really loved being told that. He was very pleased. And that's when he said to Kanai, I want you to run my memorial service. And Kanai was taken aback by that. He was like, I don't know what you want me to do. So, well, what do you do for a Hindu rite? What is the service? He says, oh, well, I'll say a few things. And my father said, okay, well, let's hear them. And so he went through the rite and he goes, what does that mean? Kanai told me later that that was the beginning of his translation of things because he really hadn't thought about any of them up to that point. And he had to sit down and write out for my father what the ritual means. So Kanai came to Iowa City when my father passed away. And he did what everyone is here doing tonight, told stories of my father. But then he did the ritual. And he told us what it meant. And it was the story of the cucumber. And he drew us all up on stage, all my siblings, and I'm here on their behalf. This means as much to them as it does to me. Drew us all up on stage, drew all of the grandchildren up on stage, and said, these are the cucumber seeds. These moments where we gather together and talk of the people who truly meant something. They are important. They draw us together as a community, as a family, because you are part of our family. And they give meaning and purpose to a sometimes terribly difficult life. And at that moment, when my father was at his lowest, your father saved his life, even in the last of it. And that is the debt that I hope I have gone a little way in repaying.
I want to give our thank yous for the evening. So thank you so much to the temple for allowing us to host the event here, and especially to Kevin, who helped a lot with the setup, to Manikwal, who helped with the setup, to Dr. Mahadevan, who helped with the audio and lighting throughout, to Satyajit Pishu, who also helped with setting the audio throughout the program, and to Tara, who is one of my directors for this whole program. So if you liked the event, it was all Tara's doing, and if you didn't like the event, it was all my problem. So you can have her to thank. And then finally to the hosts who hosted this program. So the three siblings, Mom, Mama, and Tinkumashi. So thank you to them. And I encourage all of you, even after this event, to keep Dadu alive through, as one would guess, storytelling. So you can tell stories about Dadu through our guest book. You can listen to the stories that he created through his website. All of you have access to the website at agiivideo.com. It's on that yellow sheet that you now have. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I hope that you will continue to keep Dadu alive in your memories.